would surprise a lot of people.
Yes, and that story was my first book. It was called Little Sister. I was born into a religious community in, of all places, Cambridge, Massachusetts, so part of the real involved world. Highly educated people, all Catholic. And they were under the auspices of a priest named Father Leonard Feeney, a renowned Jesuit, and a woman named Catherine Clark, who created the entity, which was really for Catholics at Harvard and Radcliffe and other schools to have an opportunity to meet and talk about their own religion. And during the war, World War II that is, it was very, very popular. And after the war, when all the veterans were coming back, Father Feeney was the most popular lecturer in the world. My parents met there. My father had been a naval officer during World War II. He was getting his graduate degree in philosophy at Boston College. And my mother was 12 years younger, and she was a brand new 18-year-old convert to Catholicism. They met, they got married. A year later, I was born. But under Father Feeney's influence, the organization became very, very, doctrinaire about you had to be Catholic to be saved. But ecumenism was spreading, and the idea was religions should all get together and, they all worship God in one way or another, and let's not, say we have battlegrounds. But that was not the way they took it. And so pretty soon Father Feeney was no longer allowed to practice as a Catholic priest. My parents stayed with him. In a way, that was the only world I knew. And there were 60 adults. Yeah. Among that were 12 married couples. And then 39 children came along. I was one of the oldest. And all of a sudden, things really started to change. We had a number of houses in Cambridge, and they built a big red stockade fence. So now the whole world is
That was like a compound.
A compound, absolutely. And when I was 6, the children were separated from the parents, and then the parents were arm twisted, seriously, to take vows of celibacy. And my father said, absolutely not. And Father Feeney came back to him, and finally Father Feeney said to him, you are the one couple, the only holdout of the 12. Mm-hmm. They felt they had to do it. They really wanted us to have a very Catholic education. Years later, one of the other children told me his parents told him the very same story. So it had been this divide and conquer.
Right.
And now the children were not being brought up by the parents were not able to be together, and it was a monastic environment. Silence most of the day. We're not allowed to address our parents, speak to them at all. And so people say, well, why did they do that and all of that? That was their decision, for better or for worse.
Right.
But my father used to break the rules, and breaking the rules to me was what told me that he loved me. Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, I never blamed my parents. Somehow, I was a bright little girl, but somehow I blamed Catherine Clark, whom we called Sister Catherine, and Leonard Feeney for separating my parents. And again, I never thought of it as a cult. You will not see the word cult in my first book. It was my home. It was my daughter, when she was 20 years old and came home from college, and she said, Mom, I have 2 things to tell you. I'm thinking, what is that? And she said, first, you need to stop everything. You have to stop everything until you finish this book. And then she said, and you have to accept the fact that you grew up in a cult. I never thought of it that way. It was my home, and I loved it in many ways. But ultimately, I accept the fact that it was a cult. And then, when I was about 14 or 15, I started having crushes on boys. Now, that was not going to keep me in the community. Sister Catherine wanted every one of the children to grow up, remain celibate for life. I would be a bride of Christ. But I had these dreams of a prince coming into the garden and sweeping me off, and, we would go off and live in a castle and have lots of children. Not that I knew how any of that would happen. Mm-hmm. And then the next thing I knew, she kicked me out. No opportunity to come back.
How old were you when you were kicked out?
17. I had just graduated from high school. We were schooled within our own community. Yeah. I'd never, seen a television show, never read a newspaper, never been to a grocery store, never held a dollar bill.
Where did you go?
Well, I had been accepted at 2 colleges because they needed the school to be accredited. And I was a good student, and I got into Vassar, and I got into Bates, where my father had gone.
Yeah.
She made me write a letter saying that I wasn't coming. She said it would be that I would lose my soul if I went to college. So she allowed me to go to a secretarial school so that I could get the necessary skills to be able to earn my own living. And my first place to live was at a room in the YWCA in a not very fashionable section of Boston.
How did something like that? You seem pretty normal.
Oh, but I'm not.
I don't even know what normal is anymore. But you know what I mean. And you've done really well. And I just wonder though, what of that still stays with you or impacted you as you ventured out into the world?
And also raised your own family.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I look back on my life. I know it was very abnormal and very strange, but I look back and I wouldn't change anything. I'm not saying I wouldn't have had more time with my parents. Of course I would have.
Yeah.
But I think the way one's path goes in life ultimately leads you to where you are, happily married, 2 children, who one of them's now engaged. I mean, they're 30 years old now. They're young adults. And I just think sometimes you're given the ability to get over the things that aren't good and find the best in them. Sister Catherine herself was never a mentor to me. But I believe she was a role model. This was a woman who ran a community of 100 people. Not one man pushed back on her. Not one woman pushed back on her. And I think when I got into that dog-eat-dog world of Wall Street, subliminally in the back of my mind, my only model was someone who ran things and was a woman.
Right.
And I think I just went, okay, that's what I got to do. I'm going to do this. I never thought I can't do that because I'm a woman. So I have to give her a little credit.
So maybe that's the perfect segue to getting from your first job or your first role to one where you moved to the business side. You said you lay awake at night wondering how you could become one of those deals people. How did you do that?
It was little baby steps, let me tell you. One of the first things I did was by age 21, I became a stockbroker. I didn't end up getting customers. I just thought, I can do that. Then I memorized, I had to do those S&P tear sheets. You're both way too young to know what they are. But there were books.
Tickers?
Pardon me?
Do you memorize tickers?
I memorized every ticker on the New York Stock Exchange. And I would go into the trading room and I would give myself tests. And I just found the whole thing so exciting. And by the time I moved to Philadelphia with my best girlfriend, I was becoming an assistant to the analysts. And the one thing I said of them, there were 6 men that I was reporting to. I said, listen, I don't want to just put numbers on a piece of paper for you. I want to learn what those numbers mean. And I want you to promise me that you will answer all the questions I have. I was ready to walk away from that job if they had said, no, we just want you to give us the numbers. They kept their words, every one of them. And I walked away after 2 years. I wasn't even 25 yet. And I understood how the trucking industry worked, and the airline industry, and the insurance industry. And so from there, it was just a little step bigger till I became an analyst.
Well, it's like you have this incredible story, and understanding that story is an important part of you, but understanding, I think we feel that way, like investment stories, like understanding the story or the fundamentals or what something really is, rather than just a sheet of numbers, right, and understanding
Absolutely.
it. 30 seconds left. What would you like to share with our audience?
Well, I do think for young people, and I love mentoring, it's important to have mentors in your life. It is also really important to be adaptable.
Yeah.
I think, put your hand up, say yes, ask someone for help, don't be afraid to, and you'll find little by little, the first time it's hard, and then you have more confidence, and then you build up your own resilience. And I think everyone should have a mentor. There's no such thing as a bad mentor. They're either a mentor or they're not.
If you were starting today, 15 seconds left, would you still go to Wall Street, do you think?
I love it so.
Okay.
I enjoy it.
Checking to see if you're feeling about
Yes,
it.
and I think it can be a great place for women. It really can.
All right, love it. Promise you'll come back when the paperback comes out.
Or even sooner.
Or even
This was
sooner.
great.
Or even sooner. What an amazing tale. Has Netflix called and said we need to make this into a series?
There have been little talks about it.
I would watch
Good
that.
question.
All right, Patricia Walsh-Chadwick, former global partner at Invesco. Her book, Breaking Glass Tales from the Witch of Wall Street, joining us here in studio. This is definitely going to be in our weekend. weekend show.
Hey, let's get a check on the latest world and national news. We got Amy Morris in the Bloomberg 98.1 newsroom in Washington, D.C.
All right, thank you, Tim. Donald Trump's defense team has rested its case today in its criminal hush money trial. Judge Juan Merchan sent the jury home for the day and told them to return next Tuesday to hear those closing arguments. Bloomberg's June Grasso says the next step, going on now, jury instruction.
So important because it's about sort of the legal rules for the road that the jurors have to follow. And so they have to listen very carefully. And what is said there is what the attorneys are fighting about.
The judge says he expects the jury could begin deliberations perhaps at some point on Wednesday. The White House is blasting former President Trump over a social media post with some eye-opening wording.
The 30-second video was posted yesterday on Trump's Truth Social account. It's no longer there, but it referenced a unified Reich as a potential headline if Trump wins a second term. Reich typically refers to the Third Reich set up under Nazi Germany. The White House is calling the video, quote, abhorrent, sickening, and disgraceful. A Trump spokeswoman says it was a repost from a random account by a junior staffer who, quote, clearly did not see the word. In Washington, I'm Nathan Hager, Bloomberg Radio.
North Carolina's House of Representatives considering a new bill called the Unmasking Mobs and Criminals Bill that would ban the wearing of face masks in public to hide a criminal's identity, even if you want to wear that mask for health reasons. State Senator Sidney Batch.
This is actually a bipartisan concern that we've heard from all of our constituents, and what we're hearing are from veterans and from a lot of individuals who are organ transplant patients that constantly have to be on immunosuppressants. And they're just really worried.
The legislation was passed by the state Senate last week. Global news 24 hours a day, whenever you want it, with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Radio brings you influential voices on the stories that matter. J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon.
Whatever the world is pricing it for a soft landing, I think it's probably half that.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen.
We do not wish to disengage from China economically.
Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella.
We now want to bring real competition when it comes to the AI age.
The names that matter on the news you need. Listen on Bloomberg 1130 or anytime on the Bloomberg Talks podcast.
This is the Bloomberg Black Business Beat. Many companies are struggling to keep diverse talent. That's why Porter Braswell, author and former executive at Jobwell, is building a new membership network to boost the careers of workers of color. It's called 2045 Studio. A name Braswell tells me has special meaning.
2045 represents the year of a racially diverse United States. And so we're really building for what the future of leadership will look like.
While individuals can set up themselves, 2045 is pushing companies to sponsor memberships. Braswell says employers taking that step makes a difference.
That's a tangible and a very authentic way to make that commitment or to make that sensation of I see you, I hear you, and I value you. And so therefore, I'm going to underwrite this membership seat for you so you can find community outside of this workplace, but know that I'm sponsoring you.
Big names like Ford, Pfizer, and McCann have already agreed to fund memberships. I'm Bloomberg's Justin Milliner. I'm the Black Business Beat.
There are any number of reasons you might consider selling your home. To move closer to family, live within a smaller budget, or just wanting a change of scenery. Whatever your reasons, having to figure out all the various housing market trends in your area may not be what you signed up for. That's where an agent who is a realtor comes in. Realtors have the expertise to help you find the right price and navigate the process to sell your home in a way that's right for you. That's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
When was the last time I took a road trip? How many national parks could I hit in 2 weeks? What about hotels? Wait, hey Erica, how much am I spending on travel?
When your questions about life turn into questions about money, there's Erica, the virtual financial assistant to help you spend, save, and plan smarter. Only from Bank of America. What would you like the power to do? Erica is only available in the English language. You must download the latest version of the mobile banking app, only available on select mobile devices. Your chat may be recorded and monitored for quality assurance. Message and data rates and additional terms may apply. Bank of America N.A. member FDIC.
At MassMutual, our commitment to wealth management means offering financial advisors the best of both worlds. With our innovative supported independence model, we're giving you freedom with resources you need to run your business, helping you make a name for yourself with our good name behind you, freeing you to offer clients the advice they need, and making sure you're properly compensated for that advice. When it comes to wealth management, we choose to lead. Learn more at massmutual.com/wealth.
Bloomberg Radio, on demand, and in your podcast feed.
On the latest Balance of Power podcast, we talk with Jim Zirin, the former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, about whether Donald Trump will testify in his own criminal trial.
In the court of public opinion, the political court, it certainly ought to weigh strongly with voters who haven't already committed themselves that Donald Trump did not take the stand and never denied the charge that he made this secret payment of hush money to Stormy Daniels in order to influence the outcome of the 2016 election. That's the charge on which the jury will deliberate.
And of course, Jim, we also know, based on polling, including polling Bloomberg has done with Morning Consult in the past, that if he becomes a convicted felon, especially in swing states, voters may be less likely to vote for him. So it just does become a question of whether ultimately that conviction happens. How difficult is it going to be, in your mind, given all of the testimony that has been heard, the arguments have been made, for this to not end up, say, in a hung jury or even an acquittal?
The jurors will be instructed that what they bring to the courtroom is not their biases, not their political leanings, not their attitudes as to whether they like or dislike Donald Trump, but their common sense. And if you look at the totality of these transactions, they were only accomplished for one purpose, and that was to benefit Donald Trump, to shut up Stormy Daniels on the run-up to the election, and to make sure she stayed silent until after the election was over, because the timing was such that it came on the heels of the Billy Bush tape.